You're listening to the Whole Church Podcast. This show is a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. Our efforts to educate and unite the church are made possible thanks to all of our financial sponsors. If you too would like to help support our show, you can do so by going to our website and either becoming an official member of the Whole Church Podcast, leaving a one-time tip, or by purchasing a t-shirt to get the word out about our show. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Romans 12, 9 through 19 in the Christian Standard Bible say, "Let love be without hypocrisy. Detest evil. Cling to what is good. Love one another deeply as brothers and sisters. Take the lead in honoring one another. Do not lack diligence in zeal. Be fervent in the Spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in affliction. Be persistent in prayer. Share with the saints in their needs. Pursue hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud. Instead, associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Give careful thought to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes, if possible, as far as it depends on you. Live at peace with everyone. Friends, do not avenge yourselves. Instead, leave room for God's wrath, because it is written, 'Vengeance belongs to me, I will repay,' says the Lord." In this passage, St. Paul is describing the communal component of salvation, living as the church. Earlier on in this letter, Paul has described the need and reality of salvation, and after, he will go on to discuss how the church should engage with the governing powers of the world. Dr. Aaron Simmons, how is the instruction to pursue church unity and peace with all men integral to salvation, and why do you think Paul may have addressed this before discussing how we engage with the political powers of the time?
I mean, it's a good question. As somebody who is a hopeful universalist, it makes tons of sense that thinking about the idea of salvation as a universal offering, an invitation, a maximal expression of divine charity to every being, it seems to me that unity then would be the sort of natural outgrowth of that. And so thinking well about seeing the moral dignity in the face of each other, as Derrida says, tout autre et tout autre, every other is my holy other, is the other who calls me to responsibility. It seems to me that that unity then would be this sort of expectation of what it looks like to find ourselves united by the image of God, a God of love such that we love each other.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Love it. Hey guys, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast. And yes, that music does mean that this is a round table discussion. It's been a minute since we've had a Whole Church round table. And we're excited because I think only one of our guests here today has been part of a round table before. You may know him. You definitely love him, even if you don't know him. The one and only Dr. Aaron J. Simmons also joined with our round table. We have Jill Elizabeth and Dr. Benjamin Chica. And introducing all of them and saying other smart things, of course, is the host with the most, one and only Pod Almighty TJ Tiberius Juan Blackwell. Welcome to your show.
Thank you. Thank you. If accolades were feathers, this episode would be a duck. We don't have time to sit here and list them all. Dr. Aaron Simmons, he writes on the Substack Philosophy in the Wild. He's the author of Camping with Kierkegaard, great book. He's a professor of philosophy at a yet-to-be-named school for reasons. Reverend Jill Elizabeth, barbershop theologian. She's Jill. She's on systematic ecology. She's great. Dr. Benjamin Chica, the man who truly has just too many accolades to name. Immediate past president of the Polytelic Society. Rest in peace. Gratefully so, I've heard. I have heard. Well, he's written What Playing As Others. Oh, there's too many.
He's written
bunch
a
of
lot
great people
about politics and dreams and other things.
That's a lot. So, if you're listening, make sure you go on our website. You don't have to purchase the t-shirt. It is completely optional because it's a somewhat free world, at least in that sense. But it helps promote the show. The t-shirts are a really easy way to advertise. They're really comfortable. We wear them all the time. And Josh, the shirt you're wearing Super comfy. Great color.
I do love it.
Yeah. My favorite is the one with the TJ quote on the back, which has nothing on the back.
As it should.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you're listening, you should also check out the Onside Podcast Network website. The link is below for shows that are like ours, shows that aren't like ours, and shows that we just like to like.
Yeah. Me, TJ, and Jill are all hosts on Systematic Ecology, another show on there, and it's a good time. And some of us are friends with the good old people at Theology on the Rocks. Lee Robinson, Christy Whaley. We just got to mention the people that we love because we love them. But I can't mention all of them. It'll take all day. So instead, we're going to jump to a holy sacrament that we like to do on this show that it's a little bit harder to do on Roundtable sometimes. Hopefully this one won't be too hard. TJ and I'll go first, give you guys time to think. It is, of course, the holy sacrament of silliness. Yeah, because you can't be divided. When you're being as silly as I like to be, today's super straightforward. Would you rather spend one day, hanging out with Winnie the Pooh or Yogi Bear? I'm going to go probably a little controversial here. I'm going with Yogi. Mind you, I love Winnie the Pooh. If it was who could I be friends with and have an ongoing relationship with, it would probably be Winnie the Pooh. Problem is, if I spend one day, I'm going to be heartbroken at the end of the day. Whereas me and Yogi, we're going to get out to shenanigans. I'm going to be stealing some picnics because, when in Rome, do as the Romans. I'm going to have a fun time. So that's where I'm at. TJ, what about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not cut out for the criminal lifestyle that Yogi Bear leads. I can't do all that. I'm gonna hang out with Pooh. We're gonna do nothing.
Eat some home.
We're gonna do pretty much nothing, and it's gonna be awesome. Yeah. So, nice. Aaron, Dr. Simmons, would you choose one?
I'm definitely Yogi for me, and the reason is
yes.
I can actually see Yogi in the woods, like doing fun things in the woods, which I would vibe with. Winnie the Pooh always seems like somebody who the 100-acre woods is probably kind of like Walden's Cabin, where it's just right next to a suburb. So yeah, I'm going Yogi for deep woods backpacking adventures.
Nice.
It's a good choice.
Jill, what about you? Yogi or Winnie the Pooh?
So I'm always going to be the pain in the neck. I try so hard to answer a question directly, but I can't. So I am picking the namesake of Yogi Bear, who Yogi Bear was named after, which is Yogi Berra, the baseball player for the New York Yankees. And who wouldn't want to spend a day with that guy? He'd just be cracking me up.
It's pretty funny. Yeah, Yogi Bear is a good answer. That's cheating.
I know.
All right, Ben. Where are we going here? Yogi, Winnie the Pooh.
So these are two bears that spend every day of their lives without pants on, and one of them clearly has security issues about this and just lashes out in their behavior, and the other is just at peace with themselves and who they are, and I think I could learn from that, so I'm hanging out with Winnie the Pooh.
That's fair.
Great answer.
That's fair. I started my Taoist journey thanks to Pooh, so I can't fault anyone for saying that. The Tao of Pooh, Benjamin Hoff, it's a fantastic book, but that's for another time. Yeah. Two of the most common ways we hear, we're talking about church engagement today, social justice, Christian nationalism, all that kind of things. The most common ways we've heard this addressed seems to be either like this social justice gospel, social gospel message, or the Christian nationalist rhetoric. So you'll have like progressive Christians who are speaking about social justice issues as a salvific manner, and then some more conservative evangelical Christians might be like, oh, you're belittling the gospel, so it's just about that. And then you'll have a lot of evangelical Christians who, again, I'm going to disagree with on this note, we'll talking about Christian nationalism, and they try to say that that's just a means to make the nation more country, to make the nation more Christian, probably also country, according to Kid Rock, and influence politics kind of in favor of Christian principles or whatever the stuff that they care about in the social wars are, and then progressive Christians will tend to see that as power grabbing and criticize that. So you have a little bit of this on both sides where people are trying to criticize how the other one's engaging. I tend to think that the social justice people are more like Jesus, but there is criticism both sides and engagement on both sides, just in very different ways. Yeah.
So in just a couple of sentences each, if possible, how might each of your studies or work speak into the conflict as, a small business owner or, pastor in his community, whatever it is, professor, scholar, authors? What are we talking about, Jill? In a couple of sentences, if you could.
Sure. So I can address this not so much as a small business owner, but as a reverend without a flock. So I have stepped away from the church, have zero desire to build or pioneer something brand new as far as like church is concerned, but I have a deep desire to love people the way Jesus asked us to love people. And to me, that doesn't just include Christians. It's an interfaith movement. It is across socioeconomic status. Just I try to build tables and invite people to tables as much as I can. That to me feels like the work of Jesus. And I get disheartened sometimes when I hear people saying that social justice has no place in the modern church. I just feel like that is said by people who never read the Gospels and don't understand what Jesus is asking us to do. Now, I don't think of that social justice as salvific in the way that, like, I don't think it gives us salvation into heaven. I think it is salvation as wholeness making, which is creating heaven here on earth. And I think it's our duty.
Yeah. Definitely underlying soteriological question behind it of like, what do we even mean by salvation? Are you just to get out of hell, or talking about wholeness making? Because if it's wholeness making, this seems to fit. Aaron, I just threw you up assuming you'd go next for some reason. I don't know.
I was going to ask you to go next.
So I tend to think that Micah 6, often quoted, still should be quoted more. So do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. I think the right tends to be really garbage at the doing justice and loving mercy. And I think the left tends to be pretty bad about walking humbly. And so if we could find a way maybe to bring those three together and recognize that doing all three, and here we'll have to parse out our words, but as a philosopher, I would say we can do all three without, quote unquote, being political. Because I think that is a very particular technical mode of discourse. And I think what we've allowed ourselves to do is think that we are being political whenever we do any of those three. And that I see as an utter disaster for democratic life together.
All right. Ben, how are you feeling on the issue?
If I could slightly rephrase the wording of it, another way to think of it is like, it's sometimes thought of as like those that engage culture and those that are just like within the walls of the church talking about what they believe about Jesus, salvation, just what their own personal journeys and lives, etc. Back in Nazi Germany, those two sides came together in the most ardent of critics of one another in Karl Barth and Paul Tillich, because they couldn't be more diametrically opposed on basically every theological issue, except they stood up and said basically every Lutheran church in Germany supported Hitler and the Third Reich. And this kind of biblical church theologian and then this philosophical theologian engaging like artistic movements and culture and kind of changing all sorts of radical ideas were like quite friendly on all churches are failing in their duty by supporting a politician instead of doing the work that they say they do. That's what the prompt made me think of. That's a different way of thinking about a commonality or a third way in relation to historical precedent of two major figures.
Yeah. I think a little bit more before TJ takes us to the next thing. Just some stuff I was thinking about hearing you guys on another podcast recently. I was hearing somebody talk, and the story they told kind of gets at why I get irritated when people are like, let's stay out of politics. I'm like, do you know what you mean when you say that? He's talking about a pastor of a local church and lived in the suburbs, and he saw the people in the neighborhood next to him that was far poorer than the neighborhood he lived in. Suddenly, the city decided we don't need to do their trash anymore. And then it's like, wait a minute, how are they going to rebuild? What's going on to this community? He's seeing people hurt, and he talked to his church and said, well, let's do something about it. So it's a pretty big church. So when he went to the town council, all this stuff, pretty easily convinced them, hey, we should pick up the trash over here. That's pretty clearly, hey, the church is doing something, helping people in the community. That is a good thing. We can get into what is that salvific or not, all the other stuff later on, but like that's politics. And I think that's what Jesus would do. Like, I think Jesus would say, hey, these people should have their trash picked up. Right? Like, and I think the problem is usually when we think politics, we're really thinking partisanship of like Republican or Democrat. And yeah, the church doesn't need to speak to that all the time. I do think there's things the church should be criticizing that both parties are doing in America. But that's not my point. When I say we need to talk politics, I'm saying we need to say, hey, these are systemic issues and we should be doing something about it. I don't care if you think it's salvific or not. It's definitely what Jesus would do. We could address those other technical theological questions later, but the church should be in politics and it should be helping their neighbors. I think that's probably something all of us here would agree on. And then to play a little bit of devil's advocate so that somebody can jump in here. I think if we had someone who was claiming Christian nationalism on this right now, which we don't, what you would typically hear is that that's what they want to do. Now, I think it's because in America right now, they don't understand what nationalism means, because that's not what it means. Is not, oh, I want to prioritize Christian ethics. Nationalism is our nation is better than others and more about this purification, putting your nation above others. That's power grabbing. That's self-aggrandizing. That's not Christian at all. But what they think they mean when they say Christian nationalist, most people, not all of them, is that, well, I want to see Christian ethics in my politics. And that's going to help everybody because I believe if everyone did the right things under God, that would help them have better lives. So they, in theory, what they think they're doing is still prioritizing this thing in politics that's going to help everybody. I disagree with how they're going about it, but I think that that's what most people who say Christian nationalism are claiming to be doing.
I hope.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Most people I've encountered, I should say it that way, because it's hard for me to know what everybody's thinking. But
not impossible.
But what are y'all's takes on that as far as like when we're defining politics, Christian nationalism, how people are trying to engage with this stuff? Do y'all have anything to add or thoughts for us to ponder?
I mean, I don't. I think it's decidedly rarer than I thought it would be to know someone who's really just like a Christian nationalist, because I think it's a minority and it's such a loud one. It's kind of absurd that it's literally everywhere, and I don't know any
living in South Carolina. How many people who I might classify as Christian nationalists, but would not classify themselves that way? It's weird.
I kind of think that what counts as like, oh, you're engaging in politics now versus what somebody else is doing isn't politics, is whether you're at the center or margins of society. If you're expressing politics, but it's kind of mainstream at the moment, you don't get criticized for playing politics. And if you point out those being like marginalized, and if marginalization doesn't necessarily entail mistreatment, it just makes it really easy to mistreat people who are then marginalized in society. And then the mistreatment can be ignored because they're marginalized, and it becomes this cycle that kind of repeats over and over again. When you point that stuff out, then you're playing politics. But if you just kind of say, oh, well, like we're just like supporting kind of what's currently like, I think of it like a bullseye, and like playing darts. If you're at the center currently, you can be effectively doing politics, but you don't get criticized for it. But then if you're doing something on behalf of the outer regions of the board, the metaphor breaks down because some of the outer regions like score more points, but you get just rings going out from the center. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. It's we have a series on another podcast that we do, systematic ecology, called Primarily Political, and I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen when people talk to me about it is that they were like, I don't think I knew what politics were, because like we're talking about like the politics in something. So whether it be like Star Wars or something, it's like, wait, that was politics, the Federation and the debate. I'm like, yeah, that was very clearly politics. Or
that was I think we did one meeting. Yes, that was.
Well, we did one. I'm pretty sure that this was one of them. But and when we talked about My Little Pony, me and Christian, we got on the political stuff because My Little Pony very clearly has, here's how we're going to help all the other ponies. Here's why this mass apple production instead of farming yourself is a bad thing. And I'm like, yeah, that is very clearly politics. You guys just don't think of it as politics because it's become normalized. So I like what Ben said. Jill,
it's also
can I just play off of what Ben said using that analogy of the bullseye? is that if you are the, majority, so in this case, for I think the issues we're talking about today, if you're a white cis male in America, you don't think that things are political. Oh, but
The panel
if
waves.
you are, I get it. If you are just a woman, issues that you're talking about are political. Like if you're talking about your own healthcare, that's now a political conversation where you may not be even realizing you're dipping into the political. If you are a Black child going to public school and you're talking about your education, we're into the politics of it now.
Yeah, and that's the issue that I have when people usually say, "Oh, don't bring politics into this," is that people are not politics. We're talking about human rights. I don't consider human rights a political issue.
Right.
That's why they're called that.
Yeah. Also,
But they are.
really entertaining if you just take people back a few decades when contraceptions, I'm trying to find PG versions because I know we have a lot of family listeners, but contraceptions were really political at one point. A lot of surgeries for men to not have babies have become not as political, that used to be very political, and similar surgeries for women are somehow political, and that's pretty much what they're talking about. Yeah.
So I'm going to disagree slightly, but it's not actually disagreeing with anything that's being said, but more of a semantic challenge to the way we're saying it. I grant absolutely, Ben and Jill, you're exactly right. I affirm everything you've just said about what counts as political depends on, who's saying it and where you're located. And if you speak from the margins, everything you say often gets characterized as dismissible, right? Whereas if you speak from the center, what you're saying just counts as normative because it becomes default, right? However, I was just today in my philosophy class teaching a lovely book by Paul Woodruff called Reverence, Restoring, or Renewing a Forgotten Virtue. And he makes the following claim, which I think is right. He says, reverence requires us to maintain a modest sense of the difference between human and divine. If you wish to be reverent, never claim the awful majesty of God in support of your political views. I think that's right. Now, let me explain why I think it's right. Because for me, that plays out at two levels. One, what would it look like to claim the awful majesty of God in support of your political views? I think it would play out as what in the sort of traditional political philosophy debates we would call it's thinking that private reasons, or even, let's just say, revealed authority structures can be deployed as legitimate and immediate evidence in the context of public discourse. I think that's an awful idea. And the reason I think it's an awful idea is not because there is some actual metaphysical distinction between public and private, but because what counts as public and private is itself a political decision about how we understand the hearing of voices. And so part of why I am a defender of public reason is not because I think it is some, natural kind, but because I think it actually acknowledges the reasonable ability for all members of society to engage with each other as reason givers. And what worries me about private reason giving is, though it can cut in favor of marginal voices who've been traditionally excluded, more often than not, it will just allow the default center to remain default and normative. And so if we say, look, use reasons that your interlocutor can recognize as reasons, even if they disagree with you about very big, deep things, then you aren't claiming God to defend your political view. What you're doing is saying, I've got good reasons for this view. Now engage it. And if it turns out that I have also theological support for why I stand here, awesome. Let's have that conversation in the context of a theological discursive community. But the second reason that I would just tweak here, I think we've got to recognize the difference between the political and politics. This is drawing from the theorist Chantal Mouffe. And politics is the thing I think we should avoid in discursive communities that especially are theologically laden. And the reason is because as soon as you allow them to do politics, again, we've now justified Christian nationalism as a legitimate mode of public discourse from behind the pulpit. I think that's a disaster. So what does it mean to do politics? For me, it's a very narrow conception of defending particular policy views as if there is no reasonable defense of a different policy view. And that's where I think our commitments to public reason should cause us to be really wary of saying, you know, if we all agree on the importance of healthcare, especially for those traditionally excluded in our social structure, that is not a politics claim. That, for me, is just a commitment to doing justice. The fact that there might be a free market capitalist and a social democrat differing about the best strategy in public policy for enacting that access to healthcare, I actually think that's a thing that we should be hesitant to wade into as theologically supported. Now, as members of society who claim to be theologically committed, heck yeah. But that's where I think we do that work best as reason givers, not as Christians or as Buddhists or as atheists. I think that's where we tend to get really squirrely, and it cuts against the very voices we're trying to empower.
Help me out a little bit. Just to make sure I'm understanding you, because I think I like what you're saying, but I'm like not as smart. So is this similar to if I were talking about the difference of like dogma and virtue of like, hey, we're following the rule of the law of the Bible as opposed to what's actually the meaning behind it when you're talking about like politics and political? Is that kind of similar?
I mean, so I'm sure you're way smarter than me, Josh, but the idea is the political is simply the structure whereby we understand oppositional discourse to define community membership. And
Gotcha, okay.
we, of course, should be political. This is the whole church world dichotomy. This is the idea of an us them that is not destroy the them, but recognize the them as the ones to care about. This is the 99 leaving them to find the one. So I don't have a problem with the political as a structure of orientation that defines communities such that we can then be ruptured, challenged, contested by the other, and also called to care for those within and those without, right? It's when we go from this political model of communal identity and organizational integrity that we then start saying what it means to be a member of this community, in this case, the church, Christianity, whatever our idea would be. It means, therefore, to agree with this public policy on school choice or this model of immigration strategy. Yes. I think that's a disaster. And it makes us the very people we try to oppose. Again, I'm on the left. Yeah. Like, that's what I oppose about the right. And so we just got, that's why I don't think the left tends to be humble when it comes to being aware of that error in its own thinking.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that a lot. That challenges me. I'll have to think more about it, which means I can't talk about it on a podcast when you just said it. But I can say I do always love a chance to get more semantical. So thank you for helping me with that as well.
Can I give a brief follow-up, Josh?
Yes, please. My brain's still catching up, so I need time to breathe.
I do largely agree. Like, what you described, like what it looks like is like Carl Schmitt and political theology that informed the Nazis. And like that's being talked about again. Like political theology went away after the Nazis, and now it's like a thing that people are talking about again. But I think it's a pretty simple point that he makes, and I think it's correct. Jeffrey Stout at Princeton talks about democracy and tradition, and like basically a democracy is a kind of tradition, and like Republicans have a tradition, Democrats have a tradition, and religious reason giving is a sort of tradition. So like those traditions have very different backgrounds that like and assumptions and worldviews that conflict with each other, but they in the political realm can talk with one another. So the private public breakdown, he's breaking that down and saying, like religious folks can say, these are my reasons for doing a thing. And it's basically what politically opposed people do when they tell each other their reasons for doing a thing. So, yeah, so like I guess that's my slight addendum, like your slight addendum to what I said.
And I would say, so Mouffe is drawing directly on Schmitt. And what I'm suggesting is we can appropriate Schmitt's definitions and reject what he thinks are the consequences of them. It doesn't mean, therefore, the us dominate the them, radically defend dictatorship and authoritarianism. It can be, look, only if we have a them does hospitality make any sense, right? So I'm flipping Schmitt on a Levinasian head that would, of course, make him, gag. But I would say, just as a critique of my own acting like this is obviously the case, not only Stout, but like Nick Wolterstorff, who's one of the best philosophers over the last 50 years, radically disagrees with me on public reason. And this is a view that lots of very, very, very serious political philosophers just say, look, public reason is a tool to reinforce the normative hegemonies that we then ignore as already operative. There is no public reason. There's always someone's reason declared as public. And I am very sympathetic to that critique, and in fact held Wolterstorff's view, which is called consocial impartiality. I absolutely held that view for the majority of my academic life and my adult life. The reason I changed to a public reason defender is because one of my atheist friends, an amazing philosopher named Scott Aiken, I highly recommend his book, Why We Argue and How We Should. And then his other book, I wrote both of these with Rob Talese, his other book called Reasonable Atheism. What Scott and I were bickering about behind the scenes just as friends, he's like, Aaron, I get that you think, hey, everybody bring the reasons that motivate you, and then let's just see where the conversation goes. And this is actually what allows for communities to emerge and flourish. He's like, but notice, if I, as an atheist, secularist, humanist guy, like all of my reasons are accessible to you as a Christian. Your Christian views are inaccessible to me as an atheist. And as soon as I started realizing, oh, shoot, that's just a public reason version of standpoint epistemology. This is what feminists and womanists and queer theorists have been saying for a long time, right? It actually motivated me to be committed to the public reason that ironically so many of those standpoint people have rejected. And so it's this tension between, I don't think either of these views, bring whatever reasons motivate you. No, you need reasons that your other can acknowledge. I think both of those are legitimate strategies for engagement. I just think the private reason view has cut in favor of the very hegemonies that traditionally public reason was deployed to defend. And that's where it caused me to change my view. And now I think, man, I can talk to anybody if they're committed to reason giving in good faith. Yeah. I don't know how to talk to somebody if they are shutting down the conversation by appealing to evidence I can't acknowledge, whether that be something they heard on Andrew Tate's podcast or something they read, in the Bible as interpreted through their pastor. Both of those end up being inaccessible in a way that I think marginalize the already marginal. And that's why I have landed in a really boring, absolutely dull John Rawlsian defense of public reason. I get that it's not sexy, and yet I think it's absolutely where we kind of need to land.
Yeah, I will say that public reason bit that you said sounds very whole church. So as soon as we get whole church badges or trophies, I'm going to send you one. But I don't know when that'll be. So
yeah, and
we used to have trophies actually.
We will at some point, of course, have to have you on to talk about what is sexy philosophy in defense of public reason.
And we'll call the episode Bringing Sexy Back.
I'll have to recommend my sexy friends like Scott Aiken, because I definitely am not the guy for that one.
Right. But there is one thing that we do for every roundtable, and we call it the Roundtable Roundup. So I'm going to read 4 questions for y'all. You just need to choose one to answer. No one's allowed to respond yet. No one's allowed to ask any follow-ups yet. until we're done. So I'm going to read all 4, and then we're going to go through. Everyone's going to pick one to answer. You're going to answer it, and we're going to move on. You can choose the same one. If everyone just really wants to answer question B, that's fine. But there are 4. So pay attention. Think about which one you want to answer. Are we ready? Cool. Many evangelicals and other conservative Christian groups have taken up Christian nationalism as an identity, claiming to want the nation to have Christian values and leadership. Historically, nationalism has had a different meaning. But how might we find a way to appreciate the desire to better one's country and live out the values you care about in how you vote and engage socially, while still critiquing and criticizing the apparent desire for power from those in these groups? Question B is, what might we be able to learn about social justice and prioritizing the gospel message from traditions like those found in liberation theology? C is, what's the difference in pursuing peace and unity and taking the mindset of some who say the church should stay out of politics and avoid conversations about social justice and matters of this world completely? And D is there any overlap in how some who claim to be Christian nationalists and those who prioritize social justice in their orthopraxy and how they engage culture, politics, culture war conflicts, and the voting booth? So, I'm now going to start with Ben, Dr. Benjamin Chica. Which one of these would you like to answer?
I am answering the last one.
Okay, so D, do you want me to read it again?
No, I'm good.
Cool.
Can we read it again for listeners who might not remember them all?
Absolutely.
And don't have the outline?
That's a good point. So, is there any overlap in how some who claim to be Christian nationalists and those who prioritize social justice in their orthopraxy and how they engage culture, politics, culture war conflicts, and the voting booth? Go.
So yes, there's relying on my Paul Tillich scholarship. There's a really great book called The Religion of White Supremacy in the United States by Eric Lead, and Tillich has this concept of faith as ultimate concern, and it kind of functions. I tell my students it functions like a lie detector test. So you can claim to believe these things and what they mean for your life, but the way you behave sort of reveals what's actually ultimate to you, because if something's actually ultimate, it's unconditional, whereas other things are conditional in your life. If it's conditional, I'll do it if you do something for me, or I'll get to it if I have time. But if it's unconditional, those qualifications are no longer in place. And he gives a really good analysis of like not just modern politics and like when did it come out? I have it on a tab. It came out during like the heart of the Black Lives Matter protests, I believe. Yeah, or just before, as they were erupting in before 2020. But like going back to before the country was formed in 1776, we've had slavery for longer than we haven't, if you include the colonies. But that leads me to, so yes, there's that. So I think there's, I wanted to highlight his work and mention that. So, actually, like, so you can put like God and like actual faith in God there, or it can be money, power, fame, etc., and you treat that as God. But there's something that actually relates to what we were just talking about, which is there's a distressing lack of this on both kind of conservative and liberal theologians, which is philosophical theology. In my interpretation, a big feature of it is fallibilism. So it's philosophical theology, not just theology, because it's not dogmatic, it's fallible. You open it up to philosophical questioning. So the thing about bringing religious reasoning to the fore is that nothing is actually private. If you mean it seriously, it should be open to anybody who's got serious questions about it. And that's a minority view, certainly in the academy, and I think in a lot of churches as well. It's either, I hear a lot of I don't have graduate students, but I hear a lot of this from my colleagues with graduate students. They basically just want to show up and be told that they're correct about how woke they are, and they don't want to engage with any of the work. And it's like, there's criticisms of this stuff, and you need to know, like, you can be wrong, and that the fallible nature of theology, and it's not private, and if you actually think this is true, open it up to criticism, because if you don't open it up to criticism, that's a sign you don't actually think it's true, is a feature that's missing on both sides.
Okay, thank you. Happy Mario Day, by the way.
I gotta represent my video game stuff, you know?
I just now noticed today's Mario Day.
Yes, today's Mario Day.
What makes it Mario Day?
It's March 10th. MAR10. So
like
I just noticed that while you were answering. I was like, oh, he's got the Mario shirt on.
I know my video game stuff. Look, I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah. So, Aaron Simmons, which one of these would you like to answer for us today?
I'll take A, which I would summarize as how can you desire to better your country while critiquing the power of those who lead it? And my response to this very briefly would just be years and years and years ago, I was in a philosophy class in grad school where a professor of mine said, you know, it's fine for all of we Derridians and Levinasians running around saying justice is never just enough. There's always the justice to come. There's always the infinitely better and ever increasing justice. But then the professor said, his name is Martin Kafka. He's like, yeah, but surely there's got to be a Derridian patriotism that would be possible too. And that was the end of the conversation. We didn't explore what that meant or how that would get unpacked. But here's why I think that's right. As I said earlier about hospitality, this is a Derridian lesson. The only way that you can model hospitality is if you have a place into which you are inviting someone to come. And I think that one of the great hallmarks of why we would be patriotic about the legacy or ideal of the democratic conception of the United States is the radical hospitality that defines at least our founding narratives of how we make sense of who we are. Now, that is certainly contested currently. That is certainly being violated in our models of police state practices, our dehumanization of immigrants and our others. However, it seems like a really good idea to say, I am patriotic in the sense that I defend the ideality and not the actuality. And that tension is what motivates me to be ever more committed to this place, this we, this us being more inclusive, more hospitable, more invitational. And this is, I think, a true sign of what commitment to justice would look like as a lived practice. And that then definitionally would mean you are critical of the power structures, because the power structures are almost always defined by a reinforcing of the status quo as just enough, right? This is why you'll get lots of narratives currently about wanting to go back to when things were perfect and we've now messed them up. But notice, any account of going back, a nostalgia about when justice was enacted, is definitionally a refusal to live into the hospitality that justice would call from us. So I think, yeah, like I'm all for patriotism. There's a reason to say I'm proud to be an American. But what that would mean to me is because we in America fail every single day to live up to the call that says, are you inviting, the suffering, the marginal, the oppressed, the poor? Are you saying, come in? Yes, yes, come. That Derridian expression. And that seems like a really, really cool political model, even if then the politics of how that plays out is undoubtedly going to be fraught.
All right. So, last, most certainly not least, the one and only
TJ, you and I got to play too,
Since when?
Since always. We've always played.
Are you sure? I don't think so, but that's fine with me. Well, then we'll make Josh go last anyway, because I already started introducing her. Jill, Reverend Jill Elizabeth, which one of these would you like to answer?
I will take B, which was What might we be able to learn about social justice and prioritizing the gospel message from traditions like those found in liberation theology? So I was thinking of a quote from, pull my notes back, a liberation theologian from early 1900s. His name is Dom Helder Camara, and he was a Brazilian priest. And he said, when I feed the poor, everybody calls me a saint. When I ask, why are the poor hungry? The line switches and everybody wants to know why I'm a communist. And I think about this all the time in our answer to the call to do what Jesus said when he asked us to take care of the least of these. And where the church recognizes, okay, that's good. Yeah, we definitely want to give our money to feed the poor. We definitely want to give our money to help the unhoused. But it's like whenever you take it to the next step of like, how about we talk about those systems that have allowed those people to end up in the situation they are? That's when it gets called not politics, but political, right? Or I guess it gets called politics, but what we're actually doing is being political, to talk about what Aaron pointed out earlier. And I just think the message of Jesus is so clear. And Ben, you mentioned 2020, which if that wasn't the year that caused all of our theology to just crack wide open and flip our ideas upside down, I had a real awakening moment when the winter of 2020 was horrible for where you all are in the South, right? You had freezing temperatures, like where you had never had temperatures before. And I remember a headline about Dallas in particular having such, I think it was January, so it was probably 21, right? Of this horrible winter where so many unhoused people, sorry, I just get emotional when I think about it because it angers me so much, were dying on the streets. It was like a record number of people died. And then I also remembered the mega churches that I had visited in Dallas that had, oh my gosh, salt water tanks in their foyers. They have all of these programs for the youth and these sound systems that are just state of the art and incredible. And I thought, how dare you let people starve and freeze on your streets and not open up your sanctuaries? And at the same time, I remember having a conversation with someone in my barbershop, because I am a barbershop theologian after all. I care deeply about every person who walks in my doors, and I always want to engage in conversations with them, mostly to find out what they need and how I can help their lives, but also to get perspectives. And there was a Catholic woman who was her son was getting his haircut, and we were having a discussion sort of about this, about me saying like, what the church is doing 2020 in the context of Black Lives Matter, in the context of immigration, in the context of feeding and clothing the unhoused was infuriating me. And she said, I just feel like our job is to go to church and like leave all this social justice crap out of it. I just think we're called to tithe, and we should just hope that our money goes in the right place and take care of our own families. And I love this woman and I love her family, but I just did not see Jesus as she was speaking. And I said a prayer right then and there, like, Lord, let me be a Christian who sits with the least of these, does everything I can to feed and house and clothe and befriend those on the margins, and not do it in a way that isn't humble, but do it in a way that says, I'm over here where Jesus asked me to be, and if you want to come join me, it's a great big table. It's also a table with really good food and really fun people. You come hang out with me, or you can keep doing what you want to do over there.
Right. So
yeah, that's it
for now. For now. Josh, do you want to go, or do you want me to go? You can go last if you want.
I'll go because mine kind of builds off of Jill's, even though I'm answering a different question. So I'm going to take C. What's the difference in pursuing peace and unity and taking the mindset of those who say church should stay out of politics, which written before Aaron said anything, so I'll rephrase it, stay out of the political and avoid conversations about social justice and matters of this world completely. Yeah, there are a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, just like what Jill's talking about, just keep the social justice stuff out of church, preach Christ alone. That's a famous phrase from something. Okay, anyway. There are a lot of stuff along those lines of like, let's just make it about the spiritual stuff and act like this physical world doesn't matter. And as someone who was raised Pentecostal, hopeful universalist like Aaron, I like all this, like, hey, yeah, future, two kingdoms, God's world. Yeah, like, I love it. I am about the spiritual. But I don't think you can separate that from the physical. And what I see, and I think the Bible says, be at peace with all men, unity. I'm going to pull a little bit from Taoism here. And I think it's more like that idea of harmony. And when you're seeing a church on a street and there's a bunch of homeless people who are hungry, starving, whatever, and that church clearly has plenty of money, the people who aren't part of that church see that. You are not at peace with them. They are going to hold resentment against that church, right? Like, to be at peace with best men also ties into feed your neighbor, care about those who are less fortunate than you, all of that stuff. And even politically, if you're not saying anything about those who are marginalized in the U.S. being mistreated, you're not saying anything about those who are dying in the Middle East right now, anything about how our transgender neighbors are being treated, our queer neighbors, that silence, that inaction, to me, the world sees that. That's hatred. Like, you might not be saying terrible things like some of the other churches, but sometimes inaction, silence, to me is just as much an act of hatred than anything else. And to be at peace, to have unity, peace with all men, does not look like silence. Because silence breeds resentment, and I think justified resentment. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to answer C as well. Maybe it's the whole church thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. But what's the difference in pursuing peace and unity and take the mindset of some who say the church would stay out of the political and avoid conversations about social justice and matters of this world completely? Unity and apathy are not synonyms. It's very different to say, oh, I don't really care what that person believes. We can just work together. And then to say that you and I are unified in the pursuit of our goals. The absence of reconciliation kind of makes unity nothing.
Yeah.
What does unity mean at that point? It's I understand that the semblance of unity is there. You can feel unified because you're working towards the same goal, but it's just kind of hollow.
Yeah. Amen. Hallelujah.
Yeah. So now that the roundup is complete, if you took notes or just have your mind fortress ready to go, is there anything that anyone would like to say in response to anything else anyone said during the roundup?
Okay, so I was going to respond to what Aaron said about the patriotism, like beautiful patriotism. And I just lit up when you said it. And I was thinking about MLK, who's just this great example of maybe not marrying our theology to our politics, but using theology in a way to bring about the best good. And I think he played on this idea of patriotism by convincing Americans of the ideals that they espouse to live up to, right? He somehow put up a mirror and said, this is what you believe you are, but you're not. And also called into the greatest of us of but we can achieve this. We can have freedom for all. We can have, this beloved community that he talked about. Now, I would be one of those critics that say we didn't even get close to it and we have a long way to go. But I do think that's where patriotism has a place in this, and not nationalism, but patriotism, that we can say, yes, we are proud to be Americans because we come from this beautiful tradition of working to live up to the ideals that are exposed before us. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Without getting too American, I also think being a patriot in America runs directly contrary to being nationalist, because the whole ideas of our country were built on welcoming others in, of being that melting pot, and nationalism is the exact opposite. That aside, the thing I wanted to add was making evangelicals happy. I want to shout out a Casting Crowns song. I think, and it's one of those where sometimes I think the prophetic word has to come from within the church. The song, If We Are the Body, I could see a more I hate religion grunge version of that being really cool, by the way. But I think it's good that it came from CCM world of saying, wait a minute, why aren't the hands healing? Why aren't we feeding? Yeah. Why aren't we being Christ in the world? If we say we're the body, where's the proof of that? And that builds on the unity thing. Our podcast is about church unity. If you're going to say you're the church or saying you're the body of Christ, we got to address that before we get to the unity bit at all. And then even more so, again, it goes back to that whole, it's very evident when you say, oh, I believe in Jesus and caring for the others more than myself. And then your church looks a certain way and your community does not. And it's like, are you though? Are you the church? Yeah.
Yep. I also was a big fan of what you said, Aaron, just because it's so easy. I really hate like the fact that I'm a patriot is now just a dog whistle for racist douchebag. But the ideal of patriotism, I'm a big fan of. We are our country. You know,
C.S. Lewis says some cool stuff about patriotism in the Four Loves. Sorry, contract. I have to mention that once.
It does have to mention that at least once an episode.
I was trying to find, though it's not popping up exactly, a theologian we've not mentioned that I think needs more discussion in especially progressive Christian circles today is Reinhold Niebuhr. And the reason that, and his brother H. Richard, but like, we often hear discussions of Bonhoeffer. We, I think, especially in process spaces, hear a lot about Tillich. Niebuhr, though, is, I think, the philosopher for our time, the theologian for our time, in the sense that he demands an impossible ideality, does not distract us from the necessity of acting here and now. Right. And this is one of the things that I think Bonhoeffer sometimes can get read as minimizing, even though I think a good reading of Bonhoeffer doesn't do this. But where Bonhoeffer, many read him as like selling out his pacifist commitments by engaging in the Valkyrie attempt. Others read Bonhoeffer, Metaxas and others, as the great example of what it looks like to enact, like perfectly this Christian vision of human existence. I think both are wrong. But Niebuhr does not make it possible for you to think that you can sleep easy, right? Despite him having some pragmatic inclinations that I'm a little bit more skeptical of, Niebuhr invites us to say there's evil in the world. And I was looking for the Obama quote. When Obama gets asked, who's your favorite theologian? He responds, Niebuhr, and then explains why. And in fact, his account of Niebuhr was used by the Niebuhr Society for a long time as like the best intro to Niebuhrian theology. Like, can you imagine today a sophisticated account of a theologian coming from the upper echelons of American governance, right? I can't. No. And so the sheer idea that impossible ideals cultivate the necessity of practical action that then motivates the requirement for us to be self-critical about the failure of our own action, right? And that's what I think MLK did beautifully. I think we see a lot of this in James Cone. I think we see a lot of this in Emily Towns, right? Like there's a whole tradition of thinkers who understand what it looks like to be Christian is not yet to be Christian enough, right? And it's not in a perfectionist way, but in a Christian realist way. I mean, this is why Soren Kierkegaard, when asked basically, are you a Christian? He says, no, but I'm trying to become one. And that ideal is what I also would say, like, are you an American? Well, no, but I'm striving to be one. Like, in that sense, notice what a cool and sexy version. Like, we are all immigrants, right? None of us are American because to be an American is to misunderstand what it means. Like, the whole point is we're striving ever toward. We're striving to be Democrats. We're striving to be, Christians. We're striving to be Americans, not as not that other thing, but insofar as justice constantly demands the embrace of an impossible ideality that cannot stifle the necessity of practical action here and now, but it also then requires that humility on the backside. So, hey, watch yourself. You think you got this figured out? Now you've lost it. Now you've jumped ship. And that's what's so cool when Martin Luther King says, I have a dream. Like, it's so slick how he does this because what he describes is a literal impossibility in the legal and social and political context in which he's speaking. He's articulating an impossible demand. But he's also necessitating a practical mode of engagement and action where we find ourselves. And had he not declared that impossibility, then it couldn't have been possible, right? So the whole idea is only by saying yes to that which is not yet, can that which is not yet impinge upon whatever we now do. And for me, that eschatological draw is something that, man, I wish a lot more pastors would step up and be Niebers today.
Yeah. That brings me to kind of an etymological joke, semantic joke inside joke between me and one of my other good friends is we often say we want to be American, but not Americans. There's a story behind that. Short version is when I was in Charleston, I walked in on a terrible conversation of a man cussing a cashier out. And the last bit of it was, it's not America, it's the America. Literally, someone said that. And forever now, there is a difference in my mind between an American and an American. Yeah. But I want to go ahead and, move on to the next question. Semantic jokes aside, there are some versions of this conversation that seem to have existed from the very beginnings of the church, right? Like one of my favorite things to like really pay attention to when I read the New Testament, because like I'm a Bible geek, is like how Paul in James, the letter of Jesus, kind of had this like kind of like a subtle conflict thing if you're really paying attention. Like in Acts, at some point, James is like, I just sent some followers out there to make sure Paul's doing the right thing. And you're like, wait a minute. You don't do that to somebody you like, like I'm not sending people after TJ, seeing if TJ's, podcasting right. Yeah, that's weird.
That's true.
Yeah. But I love these two though. Like you see a little like jabs here and there forever. And what I love in their writing though, that one of the ways it comes out is Paul's always talking about you're saved by faith. And James throws out there and adds you're saved by faith, but that's meaningless without works. And that's like, I think that's a lot of the crux of these conversations are like, are we talking about like, are you saved and the works don't matter, or do the works part of salvation? One of the interesting things, the difference between Protestant and Catholic theology isn't that Catholics think you're saved by works, but Catholics actually still think you're saved by faith, but that it comes out while you're doing the works. Whereas Protestants will say you're saved by faith and then afterwards you do works. Again, semantic difference, splitting the church. But I kind of want to hear from Dr. Benjamin Chica on this one, because I think Tillich's idea of the God beyond God really might turn this question on its head. So I kind of want to hear, like, when we think of like maybe this version of God who's judging faith or not or works or not is not even a good way of thinking about God. I think that might be an interesting voice to this conversation. So Ben, do you want to add something here?
Well, sure. You threw a curveball at me at the last second, but I'll just say, since Niebuhr was brought up, I mean, Niebuhr is one of the ones that convinced Paul Tillich to leave Nazi Germany and come to the United States. And literally the SS soldiers knocked on Tillich's door the day after he left, and they were going to kill him. So they were like there by one day. And Niebuhr, not so much the like unrealistic ideals at the moment, but the realism stuff really influenced Tillich, because he wrote Love, Power, Justice in 1952 after coming here. And the basic point is, if you love justice, but you're not going to use power to enact it, then you don't love justice. Which was, I mean, the influence of Niebuhr was clear. In terms of like a ground of being God, there's kind of like a... I tell my students it should be like a light bulb goes off at your head at some point. He and Karl Barth, again, despite all their influence, all their disagreements, totally different models of God, were right on two crucial things. They resisted the Nazis, and they were basically universal salvation theologians. The ground of being grounds everything that has being. You're a being. You're grounded in God. Congratulations, you're saved. You're grounded in the ground of being. If this realization dawns on you, you should be like, oh, I'm like trying to prevent other people's being in the here and now. Like for Tillich, it was I already mentioned the criticism of the Lutheran churches, and then he comes here, and he's ripping the German churches to shreds, which is why they wanted him to immigrate here, because they're like, hey, they're going to kill you because you're like you're actually speaking truth to power instead of shutting up. So he did, and he starts just speaking at New York City art scenes. He spoke at Met Gala openings, and he's talking philosophical theology without the jargon, and they're just like, hey, it's great, we love it, wonderful. And to Tillich, it's like, this is religion, they got it. Like, they are affirming the beings of other people, and it's not infringing on their being, and it's becoming more inclusive. He had strange terms for it that we don't have to like go over now for the podcast audience, but it creates both a wider circle that's also deeper, because it's more people, and more people in the group are included versus less included, and there's an awareness of like, oh, like I was excluded once, now I'm included, and my being matters, and somebody said that for me. And I probably did that to somebody else, and I should stop that, because from Tillich's perspective, the ground of being grounds all beings. And if you have that personal realization, you can realize immediately all the ways you should stop hindering that realization here and now. Because it's like, it's one thing ontologically to be affirmed, but you can, through like concrete cultural means, have that be affirmed. And they should both happen. So, like, while you're being murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust, you can have, like, ontological faith, but Tillich wanted that to mesh with a real cultural faith, which is why he ripped the German churches to shreds, and why he basically went to the New York City art scene is like, you're the churches here, because the Germans sucked at this, I'm going to just speak at new art scenes now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think it's really helpful, and then putting it in context with Nazi Germany really helps, too, of, like, I think it's easy for those who only really see God as like this transcendent thing, and salvation's all about like, are you going to go to hell or heaven kind of deal, to ignore the political stuff. I think it's easier for them to ignore these kind of conversations of like, how we're engaging the culture, who's hungry amongst us, who are the marginalized. It's easier to ignore that stuff. So, well, let's just talk about God, because this is a finite life, and it's really all about heaven that's going to be infinite instead of finite. Whereas if you kind of turn this view of God on its head a little bit, and you think like the ground of being, we're all grounded in God, or if you want to use more conservative language, even let's talk about the image of God being in all men, right? Imago Dei. I think that makes it a lot harder to only focus on eschatological heaven, hell, and that's it kind of stuff. But so that's why I wanted to start with that. But Jill, I want to pose the same question to you real quick. Is there a good way of finding balance between this, like, hey, it's all about salvation, or we're going to ignore salvation and only talk about what's here?
Yes, absolutely. And I think just to answer like something that you just said is that it's so much easier to think about salvation as, are we getting to heaven? Or are we going to hell? Yeah, that's by design. Like those conversations are placed before us by design, because it's beneficial for the power structures and for systems of power if that's what we're focusing on, instead of focusing on our life here on earth, and whether it's good or whether it's horrible, and how to get through it. And I think Aaron mentioned James Cone earlier. Like, my big takeaway from all the books I've read of his is that the religion of Jesus, not the religion about Jesus, but of Jesus, is a religion for those with their backs up against the wall. And it is to make life bearable here on earth. But I do think that there's a balance, and I think that we can think about our eternal salvation and also our ultimate concern here on earth being relieving the suffering of as many of God's creatures as we can.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that we feel like needs to be discussed today in regards to how the church engages culture or politics, or the political, as it were?
There is one theologian that I think should be mentioned in this conversation, and it's Kelly Brown Douglas. She was a protege of James Cone's, and her book, Stand Your Ground, Black Bodies and the Justice of God, I feel like really throws some enlightening pieces in this conversation.
Good book. Yeah. Well, all right then. One thing before we start wrapping up or anything else, we do always like to ask for a tangible action? Like, what's something that people can practically go do to help engender Christian unity? And I think one thing conversations similar to this tend to have is like, we all feel good about whether or not we should be voting one way or another, or whether or not we should ignore politics. And usually it's really hard for people to have these kind of conversations. Like, okay, but now practically, what do I do? Like, what do I do about this? Like, okay, cool. I agree with you guys. We should give a crap about the hungry people on the street. Now what? Do I just go give one guy a sandwich, feel good about it? What's next? So what is something practical our listeners could stop and do right now that's going to help better engender Christian unity that maybe is relevant to this conversation?
I have an answer to this, but it's a really bad one. But it's the one that I'm at least trying to do right now. So over at my Substack, Philosophy in the Wild, I'm doing a series called Listening to Critics for Lent. And it's trying to take seriously and charitably, show maximal hermeneutic charity toward views that we find otherwise false, wrong, problematic, etc. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm trying to make reasonable, unreasonable views, right? Unreasonable can't be made reasonable. But what would be the best defense of something that one could give such that now that other person is not dismissed, but is taken seriously as a critic, right? Mm-hmm. And what this has caused me to do is think about the following. So my practical, here's what to do. Again, I apologize because it's here's what you can do. Do the following thought experiment, which is such a cop-out. It's so perfect. Abstract philosophy. Here's the thought experiment. What if that homeless person you are called to serve, that marginalized individual that you are trying to make room for, happens to be a Trump supporter? How then do, so I am really struggling with this because I think, and this is a view, again, I'm sorry, y'all, hopefully all the hate gets directed towards you and not toward me, but I think it was reasonable, not right, not virtuous, but reasonable to support Trump in 2016. I do not think there was any reasonable way to support Trump in 2024. So if one remains a Trump supporter, I almost always will declare then, well, that's an unreasonable member of social discourse. Mm-hmm. But what then if the person who is that now I'm declaring unreasonable person is the very person I am called most deeply, most desperately to see and cede place to in the context of my Christian identity? And I don't have a good answer for that. So there's my thought experiment challenge, because it's currently wrecking me in the context of my own listening to critics Lenten practice.
Yeah. But struggling with questions together, I feel like it's pretty unifying sometimes. Like when we all want to know what happens next in that show. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Jill, I'll throw it to you next. What do you think, as far as like practical action that people could do, help better engender the unity in the church along the lines of kind of the stuff that we've been talking about today?
Yeah, the advice I always give to people is find the thing that lights up your heart. Like, where do you want to seek justice and mercy? And it's different for everyone. There's no criticizing. Like, if you just love animals and you want to work with the Humane Society and, that's your service to the world, like, do it. Just take the next action step, join in a community that's doing it. I will say I'm not a big fan of starting things. There are already so many groups and organizations and communities seeking justice. So again, find the thing that lights up you. If it's making sure there's healthy lunches in schools, great. If it's making sure that young students have an opportunity to read at the library, and so you donate your time that way, great. Whatever it is, find a community that is working to seek justice in the area that you want, and just take the step to join them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think Michelle did enough to put healthy lunches in my schools. But I do understand.
Yeah. But, it's a real issue in my public school system by my group. That's why that one always comes up for me.
Ben, did you want to add any practical actions for everybody?
Yes, I maybe had a worse answer than Aaron, and I was just gonna give like the easy plug of like, and I do mean it though. So like, I'm wearing my video game shirt. I write and speak about video games. PAX East is coming up this month. It's a huge video game convention in Boston. I'm on a panel with Taylor Thomas, who TJ and Josh know. Go out and just speak to people, not about like why your religion matters, but just get to know them and realize you have common values. Was gonna be my bad answer, just like building bridges sort of a thing, because I had nothing else. But what Aaron said made me think of a colleague, for obvious reasons I won't name, I heard give a talk at a conference about the 12-step program and his theological take on it personally from going through it. And he basically spends most of his life now hugging MAGA folks, also going through the program, and he loves them dearly because they're helping him. So, like, my addendum to your mental exercise, Aaron, would be like,
hug some people.
You know, we're all closer to being homeless than we are to being millionaires, and we're all closer to being in some situation like that than we are to whatever we deem quasi-comfortable right now.
Yeah.
So I'd leave you with that instead. Forget about the building bridges. I mean, do that too. But I mean,
yeah.
You'd be a real piece of garbage if the political opponent you disagreed with was going through addiction, or like I tell my students, the stereotypical version is like, if a bunch of Republicans were in a burning building, or Democrats, or vice versa, and you wouldn't save them. But that's like the way we actually behave sometimes. And my friend's addiction example just immediately came to mind.
Yeah.
That's so good. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
And because it's not dumb to build bridges, and I'm gonna like swing it back around to our systematic geekology folks. You know, Black Panther says, in times of crisis, the wise build bridges while the foolish build barriers.
Like it.
It's good.
Since we mentioned the geeks and gaming and bad answers.
My bridge building example was dumb.
No. But since we mentioned bad answers, geeks, and gaming, I'm going to answer it too. BioShock. If you're a gamer, play BioShock. That'll make you more united, because you'll realize all of society might just collapse if you don't have enough empathy. Yeah.
Also, I'll do it too. Another bad answer, play Signalis. It's not popular. It doesn't look good. It plays like Resident Evil 1. But it's got a great message.
This just became recommendation for our gamers.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now. But typically, I would ask all of us what changes in the world if we take our advice. I'm going to go ahead and say the church would unify, cover all of these bases. That's our hope.
Well, and in unifying, I think we'll see more hungry fed, more homeless homed, and more copies of BioShock bought. Yeah.
Which, there's no way that's profitable anymore. Surely there's not still new copies of BioShock. But to continue, we like to do what we call our God moment, and we just ask everyone to share a moment where they saw God recently, whether it be a blessing or a moment of worship or a challenge, whatever it is, wherever you saw God in your life recently, that's what we want to hear. And I always make Josh go first to give the rest of us time to think. Then I'll go, and then Aaron will go, and then Aaron can go.
Yeah. I, because other people asking off work messed up our schedule, somehow allowed me to be able to go to church on a Sunday morning. I usually have to work, so it was a very unique circumstance that allowed me to do it, and I almost didn't go, but then the homily that was delivered spoke really directly to me, and finding God in places, and it helped me bridge my Pentecostal roots to where I am now, and remembering that the Spirit of God isn't attached to a place, and it's just kind of oh yeah, that's right. It was good. Something I needed.
Nice.
Yeah. For me, you can
go ahead. No, sorry.
No, go for it.
I had missed up. You gave very, very explicit instructions, and I blew them. So
I'm just a
That's
kid.
usually my job to mess up his instructions.
There's another world where I'm enrolled in the class that you're about to teach, and then I have to say, sorry, I don't think I'm going to make it.
We're doing Sartre's Existentialism as a Humanism and Camus' Myth of Sisyphus tonight. So believe me, it is not a fun possible world.
Yeah. Well,
if I
I'll
could
be
travel,
here.
I'd still go to that.
But
I'm a nerd.
Yeah, God in my life is everywhere. It makes this way harder than it sounds. You'd think that would make it really easy, but actually it just makes every answer feel like a cop-out. So there's that. But it does, and we've talked about it a little bit today, just today, and honestly most days, we get at least one person that comes in with just a homeless person who was outside just to buy the homeless person food, and it happened again today. And I like it when it happens. I also abuse my station unless someone is listening from corporate, and I don't let the customer pay for the homeless person's food. So I just love when it happens because it's incredibly consistent, Yeah. For
what I love about corporate, what I love about the corporate world is depending which person heard you say that, you're either getting fired or you're going to be on Restaurant Weekly of the best manager. Yeah, hard to say. Also,
yeah, we'll see.
For those listening, TJ's answer was basically God is the ground of being and he exists.
That's true. That's the same answer every week. So, Aaron, do you have a God moment for us?
I do, and it's going to.
He doesn't work at a restaurant. That was a joke. Or anybody at a
restaurant.
Perfect, Ben.
I don't know. This is a very pseudo-Dionysian divine names, that God as restaurateur or God as waiter is just as appropriate as God as, holy. So mine's going to be actually self-indulgent. But it mattered to me. So this past week was my spring break at my university. And so I went downhill mountain biking with a buddy of mine. The day before I left to go downhill mountain biking on some of the gnarliest trails in at least the eastern seaboard, I rode the very, very, very easy, all green, all ridiculously simple trails just to kind of stay loose. And I managed for the first time ever to crash really badly on those stupidly easy trails. And broke a rib and messed up my heel to the point where I can't walk on my right foot very well, and gashed my leg pretty bad, and it still went downhill mountain biking because it was like, this is stupid. I'm not going to thank God I wasn't like genuinely injured. Right. But went up there the first day downhill mountain biking was really painful, and I crashed several times and it was not fun and it was super scary. And the next day though, I was like, God, this is just stupid. So it wasn't any sophisticated prayer about justice. It was just, you've got to be effing kidding me. Really? Yeah. I so want to go ride bikes today, and I want it not to hurt. And to my utter surprise and gratitude, it didn't hurt while I rode bikes. It hurt now every time I got down the bottom of the mountain. Putting my bike back on the shuttle was like 1,000 pounds, and breathing to the top was hard. But then every ride the second day, I felt okay. And it meant a lot to me. Like, it was genuinely this redemptive moment of transcendent grace being shown undeservedly, and it mattered. And so I really genuinely appreciate God letting that second day of riding happen. So I know it's selfish, but it mattered to me.
No, it's great. I love it. I'm hoping.
And I am going to slide off. I have to go teach class. So to everybody listening, thanks as always for supporting TJ and Joshua and all of the Systematic Geekology crowd, the Whole Church podcast. And it has been my honor to be with you all. And so, come check out Philosophy in the Wild on Substack, and would love to get to know folks over there as well. So thank you guys so much for having me.
Great to have you. Appreciate you, man. And have a great class.
Absolutely. Appreciate you all.
All right. See ya.
Yeah. What a kind soul. The plug for us on his way out.
Also, his God moment hopefully is going to be similar to my next one, because I've been like checking Cumberland reservations like every day. I'm like, God, I need a camping trip. I need you to make it happen, because they're booked, and I need them not to be booked.
Yeah, I want to go meet, just to allegedly hang out with Michael Morelli, but I actually want to go to Whistler Bike Park to ride mountain bikes at Whistler, because it's awesome. But Ben, do you have a God moment for us this week?
So Josh was correct. Your answer, TJ, was very Tillichian, and as will mine be. Which is, it's a bad question. It's like, where's God? Well, it's kind of technically in everything. So, where's God in all things that have being? So, what do you want me to pick from? But I do think of my main mentor, Robert Neville, published a book of sermons from like an extreme to Lickian angle, and they just sing beautifully. And it's like, if God is in all beings, things like love thy neighbor and love thy enemy are not just nice sayings, they're like metaphysical challenges that are also like true from that perspective. So like, I'm against the war in Iran, but you know, the Ayatollah has been a problem for a while, but doesn't deserve to be murdered. You know, there's going to be a power, just like George W. Bush created a power vacuum that ISIS filled, but you need to love ISIS. It really throws a wrench into the ease with which we engage in these international struggles with quote-unquote obvious enemies. So obvious enemies will be my example, and that you can see God in them.
I like that, though. That's a good one.
So, no pressure, Jill. Round us out. Give us the best God.
That's so good, Ben. Obvious enemies. My friends Jeremy and Jessica Courtney have been living in Iraq and Syria for the last, maybe 15 years. I really, if you don't know their work, like, check out Jeremy's book. Is fantastic about loving ISIS. God moment for me. I am currently in Sedona, Arizona, celebrating my 20th wedding anniversary.
Nice.
And yeah, while my view of who God is in my marriage has certainly evolved and changed over 20 years, I know definitively that the two humans in this hotel room could never have gotten to where we are now without God. But to Benjamin's point, like, duh. Well, God's in everything. And I don't think my life is prescriptive by any means, but I just, me leaning into my faith and into God has brought me such sweet reward in this 20 years of getting to practice being a human with someone else.
Yeah, that's awesome. 20 years ago, I was 6. Small difference.
I remember when you were like 7 or 8.
He's known me since I was about that age. But are you booing me for being 6 years old at one point, Ben, or for it being only 20 years ago?
Being so young, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
For being a baby.
That's fair.
Hey, I'm gonna do a weird recommendation thing here too, because we did not have with us someone almost made it, Reverend Shana Watson, who preaches at an Anglican church in DC, Washington, DC, so Trinity Anglican Church. They do awesome things, like they're a multi-ethnic, multinational church there in DC. They do so many good things for the community there. So it would have been cool to have her. Since she wasn't here, I just want to recommend people look up Shana, see what their church is doing, because that might be a God moment. It'll just make you feel good to know, hey, someone in DC is doing good stuff for other humans. Yeah.
Them and the commissioner of the Smithsonian. So if you like this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend, share with your enemies, your obvious enemies, and share it with a cousin.
Especially your cousins.
Yeah. But check out the website, buy one of our t-shirts. Super comfy, super nice, super good at advertising the show. Did I mention that they're comfortable? But it lets others know about our mission to educate and unite the church and the importance of it as such.
Yeah. Also, make sure you check out some of the other shows on the Anazal Podcast Network. Mentioned earlier, Theology on the Rocks. I like to shout out Page and Pixel, even though it's probably the show least like ours. I just really enjoy them. My Seminary Life, Brandon Knight, Let Nothing Move You with Christian Ashley. They're all great. So,
yeah. But we hope you enjoyed it. Coming up, we'll be having on Olivia Hasty to discuss her work with the ministry L'Arche, which ministers to people who are neurodivergent in academia. After that, we will be having Dr. James McGrath back on the show to discuss his newest book, Beyond Destruction, Building a More Expansive Faith. If you don't listen to all of our episodes, you should listen to that one.
Yeah.
We love James. But if you're listening to this, you probably do listen to all of our episodes. Then we'll be talking with Dr. Tom Ord yet again about his newest book, A Systematic Theology of Love. Finally, at the end of season 1, Francis Chan's going to be on the show. Maybe.
Yeah, he doesn't know it though. So if someone does have to tell him, at this point, you might have to twist an arm and make him. I don't know how much he would really like us, but
I don't think he's
just, tell him he has to be.
receptive.
Don't give him a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Whole Church Podcast. Remember, if you too would like to help support our efforts to educate and unite the church, you can do so by going to our website in the show's description. Consider becoming an official member of the Whole Church Podcast, leaving a one-time tip, or purchasing a t-shirt to support our efforts. Thank you again. Let's make the whole church whole again, together.